Hello and welcome to a new Takeda episode of The Eternal Law. On the last Takeda episode, we saw General Nobushige be ambushed by Anakokoji forces on the way into Hida. The Anakokoji force was massive and powerful. It surrounded the Takeda army and absolutely destroyed them, Nobushige himself having his life put at risk. However, he managed to escape the battlefield with just a few of his troops. At the same time, the Tokugawa army decided to attack Musashi, currently held by Takeda Shingen. He used his cavalry to draw some of their heavy infantry away from the castle in order to defeat them. Then the Ikoiki entered into a military alliance with the Takeda clan after having conquered the Oda. Finally, we prepare an ambush for any Anegakoji attackers.
The fact he survived is more proof to my point. In that situation, it is the responsibility of a leader to join his men in death. Yet Nobushige has the nerve to think he actually did the clan a favour by escaping alive. Disgusting. But we should not lose hope. Those dirty Iki will likely storm North Shinano and kill him. Then my Lord Shingen can slay them all and bring even more glory and honour to his name. If I wasn't carrying this child, I would go to South Shinano and arrange the invasion myself.
So we're back in the Takeda lands in the summer of 1552. The main problem at the moment is that the Anakokoji armies, we can see here, are ready to attack North Shinano. However, we have both Nobukado and Nobushige positioned, ready to ambush them if they do. Back down in the south we have the Musashi situation, which generally is okay. We can see here the Hojo have a relatively undefended province called Sagami. Now Takeda Shingen's army, currently stationed at Musashi, is able to attack this province in just a single turn of movement. This of course means I have to abandon the castle, leaving only the town garrison to defend it, so hopefully it won't be attacked while I'm away. Luckily, with the Yamanouchi keeping the rest of the Hojo forces busy, I'm actually in a fairly good position to do this. So, I decide to march Shingen's army over to the castle. However, it seems that Tokugawa reinforcements were hiding nearby the castle in the forest, so what I thought would be a very easy battle actually turns into a balanced engagement, with both sides having approximately equal sized forces and the enemy having the defense's advantage. However, I didn't want to back away and have Shingen's advance and abandoning of Musashi be for nothing. I was determined to make a profit, so let's head into the battle and see if I can destroy these two armies at once. So here we can see the Takeda forces arranging themselves outside the castle. The castle is Odawara Castle, one of the most famous Hojo strongholds in history. You can see it's a lovely summer's evening out here today. Very nice conditions for a battle. Now here's the surprising situation, the Tokugawa army, which is sneaking onto the battlefield over here. We can see they have some bow samurai, some katana samurai, they have a general in there, and they also have some mounted light naginatas. Now the first threat to me was that these reinforcements would spot my hidden Yari samurai, which are not far from where they entered the battlefield. I deployed them very far from the rest of the Takeda force because I had a secret plan in mind for them. I noticed that up here there's a whole ridge going up behind the enemy castle, which is forested, so those Yari samurai will be able to approach the rear of the castle under cover, whilst the Hojo forces remain on the front here, getting ready to defend against a supposed Takeda assault. And here the Takeda forces are moving into position, my first plan being to try and move my formation closer to the Tokugawa reinforcements to draw them away from the castle and towards me. This was eventually successful. You can see it happening now. I began the engagement by sending all of my cavalry out to charge their katana samurai, Shingen himself leading the charge here. The Takeda horsemen smash into the enemy's katana samurai. A huge number of them are killed right in the beginning, and I believe about 2/3 of the enemy's katana samurai are going to be killed in this quick cavalry melee. Shingen himself getting a taste of blood amongst the enemy forces. A dangerous move, but I thought he would survive. He's quite the warrior. Now the enemy's general, who had dismounted for some reason, charges into the melee, and at the same time I decided to abandon my commitment to this fight and try and draw some of the enemy infantry towards my own infantry. This plan was pretty much successful. You can see here the enemy's light naginatas engaging with my long Yari Ashigaru. One guy on the front line there does an awesome javelin throw and takes out one of the enemy troops. Pretty impressive. Back over here the enemy's katana samurai who survived are now engaging with a spear wall uphill. They're not in a very good situation and they're going to be wiped out. Over here, the survivors from the enemy general's bodyguard were coming to charge the flank of my spear wall, which is not a good situation. Some arrows come up over the ridge and hit them, but none of them actually go down because they're so heavily armoured. They just take the arrows like men. So in order to stop these guys, I had to just bring my cavalry back in and start engaging them. Not the most favourable way to fight off a general's bodyguard, but at least it will do the job. And you can see over here one of the enemy general's bodyguards has been isolated, and he's fighting with Shingen himself. Shingen takes a swipe, he dodges it. The enemy katana samurai takes a swipe. Oh, Shingen dodges it and slices his face off. Very nice work from Shingen. He has seen blood today. So basically with this, the Tokugawa forces were completely destroyed, apart from some bow samurai who made it inside the castle.
Hidden units have been discovered, my
However, one survivor from their katana samurai regiment, whilst routing across the battlefield, discovered my hidden yari samurai back up on the ridge. How annoying. So the enemy is now supposedly aware of my plan. The yari samurai come in and cut him down. However, luckily the Hojo forces were still very distracted by the fact the rest of my army was surrounding the castle on two sides, so they weren't really willing to pull troops to the rear to defend against this single unit. So later on, I'd surrounded the castle, and it was time for my attack to begin. First, I started filling the ranks on the outside of the castle with arrows, just to thin them out, because these are the guys who are going to be charging inwards once they realise exactly what I'm doing. They were moderately willing to just get hit by the arrows at first, but then they start to run away once they realise that that's just not going to stop happening. So over on the north side, I'm beginning my assault. My Yari Samurai, who have been joined by some Lone Sword Ashigaru now, are charging up against the enemy's archery tower and gatehouse to try and get inside their inner sanctum. At the same time as this was going on, I had troops climbing up the north face and the west faces of the castle walls, mostly long Yari Ashigaru and some Katana Samurai in there as well. These guys were basically tasked with defending the gates inside the inner sanctum to prevent enemy reinforcements getting in. However, they couldn't get to one of the gates in time, so the enemy are indeed going to be able to come up and attack me. I moved in some Lone Sword Ashigaru to delay them, whilst I moved up more forces to counter them. However, the rest of my forces won't really arrive because the battle is already almost over, the Tenshu almost being captured. So now these Takeda Lone Sword Ashigaru pretty much just have to give their lives to stop these guys getting any further into the castle. Of course, the enemy's Katana Samurai are superior fighters, so my guys don't really have too much of a chance against them. However, we do manage to kill a few of them in the process. The enemy's Yari Samurai come up and start getting involved as well. They're going to be a little bit less troublesome than the Katana Samurai, but there's no time for that battle to really play out because of course we've captured the Tenshu. It's a decisive victory for the Takeda and with very few casualties as well, so we're in a good position to occupy Odawara Castle, and I believe this means the Hojo are really going to be on their last legs because they've lost one of their best military provinces. We'll see what it's like back on the strategy map. It was at the moment I wiped the blood from my sword that I began to think. The mistake of the Hojo in losing Odawara Castle was much in the same vein as I have risked. Over-ambition. Here is the finest castle in the Kanto region, and yet there are no loyal men to guard it. The Hojo lost sight of what they meant to their own people. I write of this because I have felt the same cloud draw over my eyes. The near loss of Nobushige and the unexpected complications today served as visceral reminders of our fragile place, and the need to put our people first. So Odawara Castle and Sagami Province have been captured for the Takeda with very few losses, as I mentioned. Very good news for us. Some of the Tokugawa forces survived. I believe some of their bow samurai who weren't killed during the attack managed to escape the castle, so we're perhaps going to have to deal with them soon. The province is very loyal to the Takeda even from the beginning, which is quite nice. We're not going to have any issues with rebellions. Here's that small Tokugawa army I mentioned, but it shouldn't be too much trouble to just go out and eliminate them. The province was very militarized. It had facilities for building troops with superior weapons and many different types of dojo, so a very nice military base for the Takeda to have captured. I believe I'm going to try and make all of my Takeda infantry here from now on because of the superior weapons available in this province. Now to deal with those Tokugawa survivors, I'm just going to send Shingen out with all of the cavalry to go and ride them down. This is always a good idea because Shingen is of course going to get experience for winning this skirmish. In fact, he gets so much experience for winning that he is going to rank up to level 4. It's very useful to have a rank 4 daimyo because they unlock certain personal skills which are very useful for a daimyo in particular. But before we can see that, we need to pick a retainer. I am going to go for the heroic Ashigaru, just because it's always useful to have those Ashigaru be a little bit more inspired to fight for your cause. You can see here that Shingen has very high honor at the moment, which is good news, and I was actually intending to boost his honor further. One of the powers you can get at rank 4 is something which increases the daimyo's honor, and I indeed chose that. I also chose some infantry commanding tactics which allow him to use the stand and fight ability in battles, which is an incredibly powerful general ability, which perhaps we'll see in a future battle. Here's the issue, that Musashi can be invaded by this Hojo force here. There's a small Yamanouchi army in the way, so the question for me is whether they would. The Tokugawa over here appear relatively weak, no real threats from them, so I don't need to think too much about them. Up here, of course, the Anegakoji situation, which I've begun talking in the episode about, still exists, so all we can do is end the turn and see what happens. The Hojo main force looked like it was coming from Musashi, but instead goes after some other guys and one of the nearby clans. The Anakokoji indeed decide to attack, and so Nobukado and Nobushige's forces strike out to ambush them. We have only a slightly superior force actually. The enemy's force is very strong, so we only just about have an advantage. However, hopefully we can make use of the ambushing formation to actually crush this enemy force without taking too many casualties. It is chance for Nobushige to take revenge for the ambush that destroyed his entire army in the last Takeda episode. Let's see whether he achieves it. And so the attack on the Anegakoji column begins. A standard ambush formation with one force approaching in the open from the east side and another force coming through the forest here on the west side. The enemy react at first by sending all of their cavalry towards the force in the open, which was a bad move. Here I get a very nice rear charge from some of the enemy's light Naginata horsemen, who are going to go down really easy. And back over here, the enemy cavalry finds itself charging into Long Yari Ashigaru, who are currently countercharging. Here countercharging the enemy's general bodyguard unit. Loads of those enemy general's bodyguard are going to go down straight away against those Long Yari Ashigaru. A very favourable engagement. You can see some katana samurai piling in there as well. Over on the south side I have cavalry, some of which are the fire cavalry, running cycle charges on the enemy ranks, mostly bowmen at this end of their column. Here the units from the forest came in a very ragtag formation, mostly just formed up into squares, rushing into the enemy's more open formation to start slashing their way inside. The enemy's troops are of course actually stronger than many of my troops, so man-to-man fighting here is going to not really go in my favour. However, the simple fact that I'm surrounding them will hopefully break their morale. Here you can see the second or third cycle in the cycle charge regime happening on the south side, slashing down into these enemy katana samurai. Those katana samurai were supported by bow samurai behind them, which did inflict fair casualties on some of my horsemen, which is a little bit annoying. But still, these enemy katana samurai are having a really hard time against these cavalry fighting uphill and taking multiple charges. Over here you can see one wing of the enemy's column has already been destroyed. On the west side, some of the enemy's Naginata cavalry have been caught up in my spears and are going to go down. Here the enemy are holding on very well, just because they have all of their elite units fighting with my less elite ones. Here, the Onobushi, which are featured in the ambush against Nobushige, are fighting again in this ambush, this time having the situation reversed on them. They are of course very elite and they're not going down easy. You can see them eliminating some of my, I think these are the Long Yari Ashigaru fighting against them here. There's a few katana samurai in there as well. There goes another one of my men. So these Onobushi are extremely high morale elite units who are going to fight to the end in an ambush situation. That is exactly what they are trained for. However, they are going to be slowly overwhelmed by my sheer numbers. Most of the enemy's Ashigaru units go down pretty easy because they're not really trained to deal with ambush situations and they're getting surrounded. Over here you can see more of the enemy's heavier samurai are clinging on against my men. I lost quite a lot of troops here, but you can hear two announcements there. We killed two enemy generals. The enemy had two officers in this battle and they were both killed at approximately the same time. Very good for us. And so the battle pretty much had gone in our favour. Here we have Nobushige, who's come in with his bodyguards to take revenge for having his whole army destroyed in the Anakokoji ambush in the last Takeda episode. I'm not sure where Nobushige is amongst these men, but these are his bodyguards. They're slashing through enemy lone sword Ashigaru, doing very well. And actually this is the moment where the enemy formation started to break completely. They tried to retreat, all of the survivors, from the ambush. However, they were so surrounded it was impossible for them to do so, and you can see Takeda horsemen just riding down the survivors, wounded men covering the fields. The only really coherent set of survivors was over here. There's this unit of enemy Yari samurai. Now these guys were quite annoying because they kept Nobukado out of the fight by chasing him around the battlefield the entire time, so Nobukado didn't get his share of the blood. However, eventually I managed to just surround these guys by drawing them around with my bow cavalry, and they're going to rout once the engagement with them begins. Essentially Katana Samurai, and they know they're weak against Katana Samurai, they're not going to wait to be engaged, and as they try and flee, these mounted Yari Ashigaru come in and finish them off, and so this counts as a decisive victory for the Takeda. The Anakokoji force has been routed off the field and almost completely annihilated. Very few of the enemy force will survive this. So this means we've had revenge for the defeat they inflicted on us in the last Takeda episode, and Nobushige in particular has seen some of his men directly avenged by his own sword. So let's head back to the strategy map and see whether we can exploit this ambush. There you go, brother, you have avenged them all. With this we can have the Anakokoji at our feet before the year is out. I know you still feel bad, but doesn't the weight of those deaths seem lighter now their souls have seen their murderers dealt due justice on the very same spot? A fallen warrior could ask for no better a response than what you have provided them. With the sum of blood on this land now doubled, the people will have fine, fertile lands to work, will they not? Forgive me if I'm speaking too much. You just don't seem very happy on this victorious day. Now I actually lost the footage which had the battle results screen on it. Basically we lost about a third of our troops and the enemy lost their entire army, so now we're at the beginning of the next turn. You can see we failed the mission to capture Izu province, which is annoying, but we'll try and deal with that a bit later. We've also hired a new general into our forces, so we'll meet them soon. Here are the survivors from the ambush, not many of them, just Yari Samurai. I think it was the Yari Samurai we saw there at the end, some of them managed to escape. I'll deal with them a little bit later, because first I was thinking about what I'm going to do down in the south. I'm moving Shingen's army to an ambush position near the castle at Sagami, and I'm thinking of taking Izu. Here it is. You can see there's no standing army, it just has its town garrison, and I have enough troops who can reach there in just a single turn to, in theory, be able to capture that right now. So I was making serious consideration of this. I didn't know whether the Hojo would have ambushing forces positioned somewhere near the castle. I didn't want to get drawn into another open fort tactic like I did with the Anakokoji, so I had to be a little bit cautious. Now we're back up north again, and I was thinking it's time for me to deal with those survivors, so I'm sending Nobukado and his army to just quickly rout them. This is also part of giving Nobukado some more battle experience. This will count as another victory to his name, just this quick skirmish. So it was an easy auto-resolve. They're going to go down. Don't think we lost any troops there, so obviously we just bombarded them with our arrows, finished them off, and Nobukado gains a level, going up to rank 3. Very nice. So now I have the opportunity to level him up. I had to choose some personal skills for him. After a lot of decision making, I decided to go for Cavalry Commander, Die-Hard Fighter, and yeah, I think I just picked those two and I saved the rest of the points for the next level. So basically he is now able to use wedge formation cavalry, and he and his bodyguard are harder to kill. They have more morale and are more up for the fights. That's basically what those levels up achieve. You can see I'm also moving Nobushige up to the border, so I'm going to have this double supporting ambush thing going on the border. But I thought Nobushige actually doesn't have many troops under his command, so he can't provide much support to Nobukado's ambushes from where he is. So I thought I'll move up some of the troops I've been recruiting over time back at Matsumoto Castle, so now Nobushige has a little bit more of substantial force in order to take part in any battles happening on the border. The Anakokoji do still have another full army which could invade, so that's why I'm so cautious. Here is the new Takeda general. His name is Yamadera Tsunekage. He's extremely loyal, as it says here, which is good news. I believe it's because Takeda Shingen, our clan daimyo, is so honourable that any new generals joining us are very happy to be serving underneath him, and that's why they show such loyalty to our cause. So it was good for us to have a new general in defense of Kai, because of course we still have to worry about the Tokugawa coming up from the southwest towards Kai, although we happen to know at the moment the Tokugawa don't have any armies nearby, because we can actually see a lot of their armies. So now I'm back to considering what to do with Shingen's force, and decided to just go for it and attack Izu, because the gain would be so strong if it works, And it does. There were no ambushing Hojo forces in the area, so I am just fighting against the castle garrison. It was not a completely one-sided fight, so I was wondering whether to do it myself, but I decided I probably would auto-resolve the fight, just because we've seen lots of similar siege assaults already in the Eternal Lore. So Shingen is going to attack. He lost a few hundred troops in the process, quite a lot actually. I was a little bit disappointed with the number of casualties we took. However, it's actually not such a bad price to pay, because Izu is really a province worth capturing. Basically because it has a gold mine in it, which I think I've mentioned before. If we look over here, we can see the Hojo's other stronghold, which they did have, has been taken by the Satomi, so the Hojo have been completely defeated with that victory by Shingen. So now we'll watch the Hojo's defeat video. So the Hojo clan have been defeated, Hojo clan being one of the oldest clans in the Sengoku Jidai era. So it's really shaking the political sphere up to be getting rid of them, especially because it was the Takeda who dealt the final blow. Everyone in the land will know. Now let's get back to Izu and have a look at why it's so special. Here it is, the gold mine. The gold mine provides a massive bonus to province wealth, which means we have a huge amount of tax income coming from this province. Sort of more than double you'd get from another province. So capturing this is a very nice development, especially because the Hojo have upgraded all of the gold mines for us in advance. So we don't have to really invest in this province to get the full potential of it. We can see there's a few Tokugawa armies in the area, but nothing special, so there's no worries down to the south at the moment. The main issue is up here. Will this Anakokoji force attack? Well, the only way to find out is to go into the end turn sequence and see whether our ambushing forces will hold up. We see more of the Uesugi movements. We can see Kenshin and his reinforcement army are moving around deep in the Date lands and have just encountered a Date army. The Date maneuver up to try and challenge them, but then they suddenly fade back and run away. But then that happens, a Date army appears back in Echigo, the Uesugi stronghold, so the Uesugi are in trouble.
Brave men have died. It is time to discuss an end to the fighting.
Now the Anakokoji proposed peace. This was not really a proposition I was willing to go with, so I decided to offer them peace in return for 2,000 gold.
You have spoken poorly and done your clan no service today.
You can see they did not accept this. I didn't really want to accept peace because I wanted to capture Hida in return for all the losses I've taken in this war. I didn't want the war to just end its stalemate.
Infantry and cavalry units, but weak against missile troops.
So I've recruited the first unit of Naginata Samurai into the Takeda army. Naginata Samurai are a very useful unit. As it says in the video, they're pretty much good against everything. They're just not quite as good as other things. And it actually said they're weak against missile troops, which is barely true, because they're pretty strong against missile troops actually. Now because the Satomi clan, my old trade partners, have really made a comeback in the Sengoku Jidai, I decided to reopen trade with them because I want to get them back on my side. They did me a good service by fighting back against the Hojo and defeating them, so I was quite impressed with them. I'm glad to make them an ally. Now back up in North Shinano, you can see I've moved the entire castle garrison up to Nobushige's army, so he now has a full field army to command, as well as Nobukado's next to him. So I have a very fortified border there, because I was basically planning to go beyond the border and see what I can do in Hida, so I needed all the troops I could up there. Now we're moving into the next turn. You can see the Uesugi forces are marching about. They're suffering winter attrition in the Date lands, and they're in big trouble. The Date themselves aren't attacking Kenshin's army, perhaps because they know they're about to take Echigo with this army you see marching up here. It does seem that the Uesugi are in big trouble here. It's technically my responsibility to go and help them as my vassal, but I just can't afford any units. They're going to have to just see how it goes. Hard reading as all these reports make. So Shingen wiped out the Hojo, oldest of all the clans. Yet more evidence that we were wise to ally with him. And yet, for all those who speak of his honour, I have a question. Here we are, his dependent vassal, months march from home and surrounded by the hosts of our enemies, with yet more enemies set to burn our home castle to the ground. Where are the great Takeda? What do they call friendship? To hell with the Takeda. If we must all die out here in this frozen purgatory, then let it be known it was Shingen who would not come to our aid. As we move into the next turn, I'm told that we have completed a mission. The mission was to research the art form, and this is an art which is particularly relevant to cavalry forces, which is why it was a mission. As a result, we've got a free unit of bow cavalry back at the capital, and now we have this strange opportunity. It says that one of our rival clans is suffering, that the people are suffering from poverty, and gives me the option to donate money to them in order to make my clan appear more honourable, or I can just leave them as they are, because after all I have no particular obligation to help the people who are not fooled by my own clan. And I decided to give them the money, firstly because I have so much money at the current time due to my expanding empire and getting a lot of wealth from the new gold mines, and because I value the honour and the perception from other clans of us being a particularly favourable ruler as a good thing, because it's going to help us deal with any insurrections and make conquering other clans' territories much easier, because they're not going to really mind being taken over by the great and noble Takeda. So you can see I've marched up into the Anakokoji lands, and their main force has disappeared. Their main force is actually currently, well, you can see it just in the background at the top right hand corner of the screen. It marched off towards the Uesugi lands for some reason. So this is bad news for the Anakokoji garrison at Hida, because they're now going to be overwhelmed by both Nobukado and Nobushige's forces, and we had such an advantage I decided to auto-resolve the assault. The Anakokoji had a very small number of reinforcements there on the right, but not enough to affect the battle. So we took the castle with really low casualties. It was a very good auto-resolve in my favour. And so Hida has now been captured. We're going to peacefully occupy the province as usual. Now, as a result of taking the province, Nobukado gains a new trait of being brave. I thought he was brave already personally, but now he's even braver. We also get superior wood, which means we can improve our naval forces. I believe it allows them to make naval forces for less money. And Takeda Kimi, a new daughter, is added to our family. I believe it is the daughter of Shingen himself. Daughters in the game, you can use them for political marriages if you like, or if the male heirs to your clan are killed, you can appoint female heirs and have a matriarchal clan if you like. Though that's quite rare because it's difficult to achieve. Now here's the Anakokoji main force. It's massive and led by an Anakokoji general, but it's too far away from Hida to really attack us. I'm still a bit worried that they were going to try and come back, because it would make sense. In their position they should probably try and keep on the defensive, but they don't necessarily know that. So my plan was to move Nobushige up to this bridge. He can defend the bridgehead as long as he needs to, and Nobukado is behind him to support. Down in the south, things are looking pretty peaceful. Shingen can just continue occupying the town of Izu. Really, our next move is going to be to take Suruga or stop any future Tokugawa invasions. Will that happen? Well, you'll find out in the next Takeda episode. That's all for this episode of the Eternal Law. Join me on the next episode where the Oda's war with the Takeda will immediately put the death toll into the thousands. That's next time on the Eternal Law.